Not Titles podcast is brought to you by Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results. All right, this is Steve Kaempf with the People Not Titles podcast, and I am absolutely thrilled to have Matthias Smith, who is the president and owner of Pioneer Capital Advisory. And Matthias is a specialist in the SBA loan process and helping people who want to leverage the SBA loan program to purchase businesses. And so, Matthias, I'm excited to have you. Thanks for being here today.
Steve, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, so you're located up in Madison, Wisconsin, and which is close by where we're at, and we're excited. Matthias, first, before we get into all that you do in the SBA loan process, what struck me when I was looking at your profile is I was fascinated how you went from bank teller to owner of your firm is it 7 years?
Yeah, I think, thinking back here, so was it Chase Bank July through November of 2014, yes. And then started my own company May of 2022. So just around, something right around there, just under 8 years.
All right. So there's a lot of people that listen to our program that are like making career choices or wondering if they can get into business and all that. So I want to start off with, you're a teller, and when did the initial seed of entrepreneurism get planted inside of you?
Yeah, so what it really was, Steve, kind of thinking back to my childhood, there was a period of time where I actually had the opportunity to sell water with a good buddy growing up. My best friend, his name was Carson, in Ann Arbor at the Ann Arbor Art Fair. So we were walking around 7 or 8 years old, wheeling wagons of bottled water and basically undercutting the street vendors for basically half of what they were selling them for. So that was really the spark. But more recently, back when I was a teller at Chase Bank, I was also doing an internship for a company called Course Hero based out of the San Francisco Bay Area. And basically what I was doing was I was a business development associate intern at the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus, essentially helping Course Hero scan and upload notes from students in different classes to complete sets for different courses to build out their platform. So that was kind of the more recent entrepreneurial internship that sparked kind of the combination of banking and entrepreneurship that eventually led to going to start my own thing.
Okay, so you're a bank teller. You get the bug. You sold water as an 8-year-old to people. Was that on the University of Michigan campus?
Yeah, downtown University of Michigan campus. Yep.
Nice, that's excellent. Okay, so take us now. You're a teller. So when did you start thinking about making the SBA, kind of career path, your path?
Yeah, so in all honesty, Steve, the SBA specifically, getting my first job in the SBA space was random, honestly. It was my 4th interview of the day. I had interviewed, I think, first thing in the morning for Kohl's, so the retail clothing store, to work at their corporate headquarters, I think as an inventory buyer, if I recall correctly. And then I interviewed at the UW-Madison Business School for a proprietary trading firm that was just basically doing trading kind of stocks and bonds and that sort of thing. And then the 3rd interview, I think, was at a retail bank in the Madison, Wisconsin area for a branch manager position. And essentially the SBA lender role that I ultimately ended up taking with my first week of college, it was my last 4th interview of the day. And I just hit it off with the guy that ultimately ended up hiring me.
Was that at Byline?
That was at the bank before Byline. It was at a bank called First Bank Financial Center, since renamed to Bank 59 most recently.
Okay. And what struck you with that? What made that, as you're going through the interview process, what stood out at you to say, I think this is the way I'm going to go?
Yeah, so the way I'd honestly describe it, it's like, sometimes when you meet people and you just have a chemistry with them and you kind of feel like that, it's hard to explain well, but like when you meet someone for the first time and you just kind of tee it off, that was kind of basically the energy that I felt with my then former manager. His name was Brent Benjamin.
That's great. That's a good thing for people to know, is that you get and especially as you meet people, you start to read people, you start to see their energy, you start to get a feel for whether they have good intentions for you or whatever, right? And you're like, okay, so that's good. You're a great read of people. So how'd that go, and how'd you get how'd you get your experience with the SBA process?
Yeah, so as far as getting hired there, so basically it was just, kind of normal several rounds of interviews. The initial interview with him. Well, I think first I met with HR, had a phone interview with them, but went down, had a sit-down interview with him, and there was another guy working in the office that was also a commercial associate named Paul. So they were both part of the interview process. They basically, they were looking for someone that was kind of a blank slate that wanted to come in and learn. So that was basically their requirement. And so after kind of passing the first hurdle, interviewing with Brent and getting his stamp of endorsement, then I went to the bank's Milwaukee, Wisconsin office, or it was in Economowoc, suburb of Milwaukee, to interview with Brent's boss, whose name was Mark. So essentially they were looking for someone that was young, hungry, smart, had some skills in math. Yeah, good looking. I'd like to think I'm good looking. Up to the viewers here to decide. And just someone that wanted to grind, honestly. So
awesome. And so you didn't disappoint them, did you?
I did not. No, I mean, I made it there for 3 years. So
awesome. And so from soup to nuts, did you learn the business close by? Was there a mentor there for you at the time?
Yeah, so honestly, it was very much kind of a breathing down a fire hose type environment. I don't know if anyone's ever read what was the book Liar's Poker by Michael Lewis. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a comparable environment in the sense that, it's not working on Wall Street, but essentially I was off on an island in Madison, Wisconsin, metaphorically speaking here, working under Brent, who was my supervisor at the time, and essentially helping him with his origination efforts. So as kind of his dedicated, I don't know if loan admin's the right analogy here.
Kind of internal guy.
Yeah, can't think about like Batman and Robin type of thing. So using that metaphorically speaking. So basically everything from going with him on site visits, driving around Wisconsin, visiting manufacturing companies, gas stations. There's even a dance studio that we financed. So things like that. But essentially my role was everything from helping to organize files before they get shipped off for pre-funding file review, pre-funding review, to kind of the front end, maintaining the deal pipeline to make sure that everything was accurate, up to date, and we had things that were needed to keep things moving along in credit and underwriting.
Matthias, that's fascinating, because I'm a big believer in sales, that if you can find a top producer and ride shotgun with them, you will have a front row seat to a master class in selling and relationships and process. And, if you can keep up, and it sounds to me like that's kind of what happened with you.
Yeah. So it was a good 3 years there. I guess just kept pivot from there to after that. So essentially I got a call one day. This was July of 2017. So I was a commercial associate. Brent had moved from the Madison, Wisconsin office to Milwaukee because his wife got a job working downtown Milwaukee. And so I essentially got promoted with, no kind of foresight into getting this promotion. Basically going from being a back office guy to being a lender. But essentially what happened here was I got stuck doing the back office responsibilities while I was also supposed to be kind of doing origination too. So this was between July through end of January of 2018. That was in this kind of lender role. So I found one deal that I closed for this husband-wife couple that was buying a bar on the east side of Madison called Pooley's. And that was kind of the one deal I closed. But essentially what ended up happening was the bank's Madison kind of SBA presence, they just didn't really find the need to be in that market. And since I had basically gotten this massive pay raise to go from being back office to front office and stuck with this back office stuff, long story short, it didn't work out. So that
Okay.
was kind of the end of my first in SBA.
And so were you like let go,
Yeah, basically,
or
pretty
you just
much.
kind of shut it down and said we're not doing it anymore?
Yeah, so I basically just got let go, unfortunately. So I went from that to I drove Uber from the end of January of 2018 through early March of 2018.
And did you when you got let go, what was that feeling like? Did you question yourself? Did you
Yeah.
doubt? Did you say, okay, I'm going to stay in this thing, or were you like doing some soul searching at the time?
Yeah, it honestly sucked, and I didn't really see it coming because I went from, I was making like 40 grand from the time I started to making, I think it was 70 or 75 when I left. I'd been promoted once and given 2 different pay raises. So, I did some soul searching, and I just decided that it was time to keep grinding.
Awesome. All right. And so then you got your next gig.
Yeah. Yeah. So went from there. So the Bank 59 to working at Byline Bank, worked at Byline, got hired from a lender that I'd met while I was at First Bank Financial Center named Tom Lyons. So he kind of runs the Madison, Wisconsin Byline office. So started working there as a closer middle of March of 2018. And basically what the closer does, it's kind of what it sounds like. It's overseeing the process from the time a loan gets approved up through closing and funding.
Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are brought to you by our great sponsors, Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results.
So was in Byline basically doing that role, interfacing with intermediaries, borrowers, business buyers, buy side and sell side business attorneys, internal folks, kind of seeing everything that would happen within the bank, behind the scenes, and the logistical flow from approval through to closing. And so was at Byline then from March of 2018 onwards through, I think it was either end of March of 21 or early April, and went from there to take an opportunity at Live Oak Bank doing the same thing for the next 6 months.
Awesome. So you went from kind of on the front end where you're putting the deals together and then dishing them off to someone to being the person that it gets dished off to. And in that role, you're kind of making sure that the deal gets done. So you're on the factory line.
Yeah.
You learn the front end of it, you learn the middle of it, and now you're taking those things out to where the final product gets put through. So I see how this whole process of training has, you start to see the expertise really start to jump out.
Yeah, correct. So I'd worked on the front side for those 6 months at First Bank Financial Center as the lender. The middle the middle piece of the factory line is the underwriting side. That part I actually did not have any formal experience in. I did a credit training when I was at my first employer, but it was very brief. So essentially I'd worked on the front side as a lender, and I'd worked on the back side as the closer before the promotion at First Bank, and then also at Byline in the closing role.
All right. So now what happened next?
Yeah. So from there, I went from Byline. I took a job at Live Oak Bank, working in their search fund lending division, specialty finance division, basically super kind of focused on these M&A deals. So business buyers, looking to use ETA, SBA 7A loans to buy businesses that were doing kind of the search fund lending side deals where you'd have investors in the ownership group that were providing the down payment capital, supporting the searcher. So I started on that team April through June-ish, plus minus, of 2021. And then essentially what happened, so I was working kind of on 2 different teams. One was the ETA team. The other one was kind of these middle market specialty deals. And I actually got hired to be the closer, or one of the closers on the specialty team. But the lady that was going to train me was too busy. So I got kicked back into the SBA generalist pond, basically doing all these same types of deals I'd worked on at Byline. And essentially the managers oversee the specific teams based on the department or division that you're in. So I went from having a super awesome kind of hands-on, everything goes boss, as long as you're doing your job, to someone that was more kind of micromanagement side. So at the end of August, essentially around that time, I got approached by Byline to come back because they really wanted me back on their team, and they offered me, I think it was a $20,000 pay raise. So I went from making $75,000 to $95,000 in a period of 6 months, and essentially offered some under the table PTO too and some other fringe benefits. So I just decided to go back to Byline around Labor Day of 2021.
Okay. And so all during this time, Matthias, was there another effort of personal development separate from getting the expertise of your craft, the profession of lending and doing business deals? Did you doing anything else? Were you reading? Were you listening to stuff? Tell me a little bit about the personal journey of self-development, because I sense it, and I'm throwing a wild dart out here, but I wonder if there was something else going on, goal setting, whatever. So tell me about that.
Yeah, great question. So I was kind of trying to figure out, what does ultimately progressing in this banking career or banking journey with an SBA look like to kind of climb the ladder. So I was exploring things like contemplating going to the graduate school of banking that they have here in Madison, Wisconsin, potentially going back and getting a nighttime MBA from UW-Madison or somewhere similar. And then outside of that, around this point in time, I was also running half marathons, doing 5Ks. And then outside of that as well, I was also filming some content of business owners, so friends and other people in the Madison area, and kept talking about learning their stories about how their business had survived and or thrived or died during the pandemic. So I had a friend have a friend that owns a landscaping business in Michigan. His name's Carson, the same guy that I was pedaling balled water with back when I was 8. So I did a podcast type thing with him. I think it's still on my LinkedIn if you go back to 2021. I did another one with this guy that owned a brewery in the Madison, Wisconsin area. I think it was called Rockhound Brewing, if I remember correctly. And that ultimately, the pandemic was kind of the nail in the coffin for his business. And there are a couple of other ones too. So I was exploring this kind of, social media through video stuff kind of outside of work to see if that was worth dabbling in at the same time.
Okay, so you're just an ambitious guy, and you're like, Mike, I'm not just going to be a career 9-to-5 stiff. Nothing wrong with that. If that's your goal, life goal, God bless. But I want more out of life. And, so I'm learning, I'm hustling, got my eyes open, learning from business people and all that kind of thing. All right. So now when does the idea of Pioneer Capital start to come into your head?
Yeah, so the idea of Pioneer Capital, so I guess just kind of fast forward for the purpose of the viewers. So I went back to Byline. So this is September of 2021.
You get your bag of $20K extra.
Yeah. Well, the bag, right? If you paid out annually, right? Because it was I was only back for 6 months, so half of $20K after taxes.
So it's a pouch. It's not a bag. It's a pouch.
Yeah, maybe a little sandbag or something. But yeah, so went back to Byline September of 21, was back there through March of 22. And so essentially what happened was the bank had me talk to its top management consulting firm to ask the reasons I left, what they could do to do better. And the short version of the story, just for brevity, is the reasons I left in the first place didn't end up changing. And it was more like they were checking a box, just having me have this dialogue. And basically some of the systems there were of the burnout nature, but just to kind of keep it short. So came back to Byline, left again to go to a local bank in the Madison, Wisconsin area called First Business Bank, started there March of 2022, and took a job there as a closer, local bank, thinking career advancement here locally, be able to meet people in person that I'd be working with, and potentially advance, due to the local nature of getting to make acquaintances with the people.
Build relationships locally, leverage the Madison vibe.
Yeah. Yep. Correct. Yeah. Completely nailed it. So where the So we're Pioneer, where the impetus comes from with Pioneer. So the day I start at my last bank, First Business Bank, great bank, by the way, friendly people. The day that I start there, I get a DM on LinkedIn from an attorney that I worked with at Live Oak in Byline named Scott Oliver. So Scott is a partner at a law firm called Lewis and Kappas, based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. And so he sends me a DM and says, hey, Matthias, congrats on the new job. Wishing you all the best of luck and success. Hey, by the way, here's a space on Twitter of all these business buyers looking to buy small to medium-sized businesses. You should join this space. You should network with these buyers and help your bank generate leads for people looking to do SBA loans, essentially. So around this time, my then former head of SBA lending at the bank, Marty Ferguson, mentioned on a pipeline call, hey, we have a shortage of deals. You lenders need to do a better job at finding deals. That was basically the message. And so even though my job was middle office, I kind of thought, ultimately my employment here and longevity hinges on deals coming to the bank. So why not see what I can do to help the team? So I basically started putting content out on Twitter about business plans, projections, sources and uses, explaining to buyers how to use a home equity line of credit to get their house over and above the loan to value threshold, where it would be bank subjectivity if they need to take a lien on it or not, and other kind of adjacent topics to this. And so that started in March, and I just started funneling all these referrals to lenders at my bank, both people that were going under LOI and potential people that were in close striking distance. So I get to April and everything's going well. So basically up to this point, only the lenders and the people in the SBA lending division know where these referrals are coming from. So I get to April and I make the dumb mistake, looking back at this, at retweeting a tweet from my bank, at which point my bank's head of marketing that ran the bank's Twitter account catches wind of my Twitter, starts going through my feed, reading all of my posts on the things like the home equity line, similar. So she then pulls in my bank's head of compliance. And so basically they reach out to me and try to rein me in and say, hey, we need you to be vetting your stuff by us first. Why don't we do this in a more controlled environment, blah, blah, blah. And long story short, I thought this was stupid. So I just kept doing my own thing from April onward through May when I get to my 2-month review. And so I send my bank, which looking back at my DMs, I think we've told to around $15 million of referrals over those 2 months. So I get to my 2-month review early May of 2022, and my boss is like, hey, you're kicking ass at your job, keep it up. Everyone likes working with you, but we either need you off of Twitter or we need you to stop posting about banking, SB, and acquisitions unless you want to vet your stuff by us first, because there's a concern from upper management that if someone's deal goes sideways, it's going to come back and be our problem because you work here. So back to your earlier question, when the impetus, when the seed got planted, was in April, shortly after this bopping of heads with my compliance and marketing team. I was on my way to New York to visit a good friend from high school, and I was in O'Hare Airport, the United Club, and I was talking with this guy that was like a retired Marine and whatnot. We're just shooting the breeze. And this whole compliance culture, banking, Twitter stuff came up. And the guy basically said to me, like, you would be crazy to stay at this bank because you're like getting held back. He's like, you're a young guy. I was 28, turning 29 at the time. He's like, if I were you, I'd do something entrepreneurial. So that seed had been planted back in mid-April. And so I get to this 2-month review. And essentially right after this 2-month review, I was heading to Greece for vacation for 2 weeks. So I didn't want to rock the boat and just destroy that. So I get to Greece. I'm there with my wife. We're touring around. And during this vacation, I'm thinking to myself, here I am at this bank that just feels like it's entrepreneurial soul killing. And it just doesn't make sense to me at all. So I thought, why not try to do something entrepreneurial? Here's the space on Twitter of all these business buyers looking to buy these small to medium-sized businesses. There have been firms that I'd been working with and people that I'd met on Twitter that were starting up firms using Twitter as the foundation. So, for example, There's a law firm called S&B Law Group. 3 guys that are the founding partners, Kevin,
Down in
Sam, and
Florida,
Eric.
those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, those guys there. Yeah, 2 in Florida, 1 in Texas. And so I'd met them from Twitter. They'd started their ThinkCAD off of there. There's another guy that owns a fractional CFO firm. His name's Connor Bean, based in Dallas, Texas. Same thing. Use Twitter as the foundation. So I thought, here's this market of all these buyers on Twitter. If I stay at my bank, I'm going to have to remove myself from this, this platform, which just seemed commercially stupid. And so I thought, I've worked at these 4 different banks, Live Oak and Byline, 2 of the top 5 nationally ranked SBA lenders. I've worked at these other 2 in Wisconsin. I felt like I had a pretty good pulse on what different types of deals these different banks want to fund based on industry, buyer background, debt service coverage, collateral, and other factors. And I kept in touch with the lenders I'd worked with as they'd gone from one bank to the next, to basically understand what they were getting funded at their new banks. And then lastly, when I was at these different SBA banks, Live Oak, Byline, etc., anywhere from 3/4 to 80% of deals I worked on came from a referral source, basically introducing the deal to the bank, helping the buyer negotiate the term sheet, and basically being involved from point A to point B. So term sheets, underwriting through to closing, and then getting paid at the end anywhere from 1% to 2% of the loan amount from the bank after the deal closed outside the settlement statement. So I thought, here's a market, here's my understanding of the SBA marketplace, and here's a revenue model. Why not plug these 3 things together and form a business specifically focused on the ETA space in the loan brokerage area to help these buyers go from point A to point B? So one kind of adjacent to that is lots of these people I'd worked with as a closer that were brokers. They weren't just doing SBA, they were doing like multifamily, bridge debt, all this other stuff. So I thought, why not just be hyper surgically focused in this business buying space? And so that was the impetus that led me to start Pioneer. So halfway through this trip in Greece, put my notice in, quit my job from the island of Crete, and then came back.
That's like the Apostle Paul sending the sending the scriptures or whatever, right? At Crete or wherever that is. But awesome.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I have a book in the Bible named after me. I guess I do. I'm the disciple that replaced Judas. But anyways, that's another story. So yeah, came back, returned my laptop and signing bonus, and now here we are. So
bro, so what did your wife think about all that? Was she like, go for it?
Yeah. My wife was honestly shitting herself when this happened. So basically, yes, not to be blunt, but essentially she knew that I was going to make a decision on this and that it was going to come sooner, not later. And I think she had the confidence that everything would eventually be okay. But when you go from, 2 W-2s under one roof to 1, it makes a big difference economically. So looking back at it, I mean, maybe I should have been more pragmatic about the timing of this and whatnot, but I had everything teed up as far as liquid capital, savings, and things of that nature.
Yeah, and you felt like you were going to be pushed. You were at the crossroad, right? It was like, hey, shut your life down, shut your future down, shut your ambition down to fit into the little square we have and shut up and play nice in your cube, or go be Matthias Smith, the ass-kicking SBA guy. And it's like, okay, I know the road I'm going to be taking here. And your wife married you probably because you were that guy. She knew it. She knew what you were going to do and didn't want to hold you back. So God bless for having a woman by your side that is your champion, so good for you.
Yeah, thanks. No, definitely looking back at it, glad I had that support for sure.
Yeah. So, okay. It's interesting, by the way, because, I always say the reason people don't succeed is because they haven't failed enough. And, when you look at when you got canned, right, and you're driving Uber, you take a snapshot of that. It's like, what a loser, man. He got fired from his job and he's driving Uber or whatever, this deal or that deal. They're shutting you down. And people, if you don't have that positive mindset of this door is closing because there's a better door opening, you took lemons and made lemonade out of it rather than being a victim. So now you start your business. when did you do your first? So you open up your doors, right?
Yeah.
When did you do your first deal, Matthias?
Yeah, so great question. So started or incorporated, kind of launch middle of May of 2022. The first deal I had did not close until September of 2022. So basically 4 months from opening to closing. And I think the commission check I got from the bank was somewhere on the order of $10,500 plus minus.
Yeah,
So,
divide that over 4 months, and that's
and then
not a lot.
subtract startup costs.
Yeah, subtract startup costs. So that's it, right? Everyone wants to own a business, but no one wants to build a business, right? And you were building a. What kept you going during that dry time, Matthias? What were you thinking about that drove you?
I think I saw, like, it was honestly just the opportunity in the market, and I saw there kind of becoming more critical interest in the space, potential deals that I saw could materialize. And it was around July, August that I started to kind of pick up more critical traction in the space and have stuff that was getting close to getting into underwriting where I could put real dollars and cents on that when those opportunities would end up closing.
Awesome. And on your website, it shows more than a handful of the deals you're doing. HVAC, towing companies, cleaning companies. I mean, literally, any kind of business that people are thinking about starting or acquiring. It seems to me like you've had experience with. So maybe just talk about, Matthias, for those who are listening, what are, someone who is, startup entrepreneurs, acquisitions, really anyone who's on that continuum is worth having a conversation with you, right?
Yeah, correct. So anyone that so the niche that I have specifically is in the business buying subsection of SBA 7A lending. But anyone looking to buy a business that's looking at a company, I'd say of around like 1.25 million purchase price or higher. So anyone more specifically looking for 1 million to 5 million of SBA 7A financing. And then there are some banks that will add on conventional on-balance sheet bank debt over and above the 5 million mark, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So, Matthias, there's a lot of options out there. What do you consider to be your personal brand? What do people get when they deal with you?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, I mean, and I'm biased here, I'd say someone that is a grinder and someone that works hard, someone that thinks outside the box as far as solving problems that can present themselves during the SBA lending process. So before, whether it be during underwriting, working to get approved, or after approval and closing. And then also someone that stays up to date with the various SBA structures and guideline changes to know very well what's allowable and what's not allowable, so that you as the buyer basically have the whole marketplace of options as it pertains to how you want to structure your down payment, whether you all want it to be buyer and or investor cash, or if you want to open up the box, explore something more creative as far as using a seller's note that has no payments for the first 2 years and then payments in year 3 through year 10. So the partial standby seller's note, or a seller's note that has no payments for the full 10 years, the full standby seller's note to come up with part of the down payment. So basically, someone that's a grinder, someone that is in tune with the different changes in the SBA regulations, and someone willing to go to bat for them as a client.
And someone who knows how to structure a deal in a creative way.
Correct. Yep.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. So, Matthias, wrapping up, maybe talk just a little bit about your vision for your firm. Where do you see yourself going over the next 5 years that you might want to share with folks?
Yeah, so my ultimate goal is to be, eventually more focused on strategy, content, education, business development. Personally, I'd say as a firm, building a team that operates autonomously, where I have people in the front end of the process that are interfacing with the client, doing the initial kind of client intake and figuring out what the deal is, helping with the structuring and evaluating. Someone that builds a credit memo for the bank or for the SBA lenders to put the deal in front of them, and basically knowing what type of deals are fit for different banks and putting the right deals in for the right banks. And then someone kind of overseeing the post-approval closing process. So essentially building something that marries up with the same assembly type model that the banks are using, but on the loan brokerage side. And then I can be involved in helping to build a team and helping to hire the right people.
Awesome. That's great. Well, Matthias, I want to thank you for spending time with us today, talking about your journey, talking about your unique value proposition, and how you're really cutting a way into the marketplace to really have your voice heard throughout all the noise. So I appreciate just you sharing this time with us.
Thanks for having me. It's great being on here.
Awesome.
Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are proudly sponsored by Land Trust Title Services. If you enjoyed the podcast, please hit the like button, please subscribe, and we'd love it if you'd share our podcast with your friends. Thanks a lot.